the trade deadline. Trade deadline is fun. It's fun. It's awesome to watch all the movement all over the league. I mean, it's definitely not fun for the players. Let's get that out of the way. You know, that's where I have trouble with it from a value standpoint. I do think that there is a cost to it that probably most people don't associate to it, but it is fun. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy tracking trades, finding them, watching teams improve, watching teams take a risk. Sometimes teams make brilliant moves prior to the trade deadline, like really solid moves, and sometimes teams just make out, and it's kind of crushing a little bit to watch your competition set themselves up for some success. I think the New Jersey Devils did a really good job of releasing assets early. I know he has to start over. I know Shiro out. You know, obviously they're resetting, but the pieces are there. As long as they make the right decisions leading forward, they have probably a few-year process ahead of them. Financially, that won't be fun, but overall, they've probably set themselves up to fill their lineup up with good young talent, free up that cap space that they need, and then eventually bring in some solid vets. Kind of what the Flyers did. And again, it took a while. It took 5-6 years. The Devils are not really 5-6 years, maybe 2-3. They had to reset. They're going in the right way, going back. But the trade deadline can be very valuable. The Philadelphia Flyers are in a very different position than the New Jersey Devils. It's one that we're not used to. We were used to selling off assets. Under Hextall, you know, that's how we got Travis Konechny. We traded Braden Coburn. We got Gudas and a first. The first turned into Konechny. Gudas turned into Niskanen. Do you see how these trades can be very valuable, and they can kind of work themselves out in really interesting ways over several years. They don't have to just be a trade that'll be valuable just for once. An asset is always a valuable asset. This year, the Flyers find themselves in a very strange position because they desperately need a third-line center. Not desperate in the sense that they can't compete, but if they want to win a championship, they do recognize that they will need that position soundly locked in. That position is at the very least supposed to be taken by Nolan Patrick or Kevin Hayes or whatever order you want to, put those guys in. One of those spots is supposed to be taken by Nolan Patrick. He is rumored to be coming back. That's all we have right now. I'm sure he's going to start practicing. I'm sure he's going to start practicing with Lehigh and probably get a couple games in with them. That will happen at some point. We'll see what happens as we move into the playoffs. But again, you need him to work his way back in anyway. And this doesn't really leave you, without that hole that's left, Oscar Lindblom. And, it's still, don't get me wrong, I'm only really thinking about him from a person standpoint, and I wish him nothing but the best. If he's back, that's the greatest thing ever. But, for the most part, I just hope that nothing happens to him physically. So outside of that, recognition that you lost a huge body in your plan for the year. So the Flyers do need to fill that void. If they do have another injury of some sort, maybe a larger one, even somebody like Scott Lawton or Raffle or both of them at the same time, or Pitlick, these guys are valuable and under the radar valuable. Most people laugh that stuff off, not a game changer, but I disagree with that stuff completely. You need an entire full lineup, and you need your fourth line to be competitive so they're not getting beat. So you're not double shifting players. You're confident to put them out at the right time. And maybe it's not a fourth line player we need, but we need a bottom six forward. Not everybody would agree with that. Most people want to trade Shane Gostisbehere, which, again, I am not in favor of doing, especially not in the manner that people are talking about, at a loss of some sort. I mean, at this point, he's probably not going anywhere. At least not this season. They'll probably wait closer to expansion draft for that. And that's really just a numbers game, not a, hey, this is garbage. It's more of like, hey, we have this asset that we probably will lose in expansion or we risk losing. So let's see if we can procure something else that our organization needs that we can protect. Because that's what this is all about, is keeping your assets. And that's what the Flyers are going to try to do here. They're not going to get rid of any other players. They're going to try to add. They have a lot of assets. Maybe they'll have to trade a prospect. Hopefully nobody that we love. But I do believe the Flyers will go and pick somebody up. I've heard Filppula is a rumored player. Again, people might scoff at that. We're not asking him to come in here and be a third-line center even. We need him to be a fourth-line center. And Connor Bunnaman has done well. I don't want to replace him. I don't care if the guy plays 13 forward for, a lot of the time he's here. But we need another body. That is very clear to me. With Andreoff in the minors, he is the best option we have. I'm not knocking him, but he is not good enough come playoff time. If we want to sneak further than we've ever gone, at least in the modern day, especially Obviously, new GM, you want to make a little bit of a push. You have a ton of assets. There's no reason you cannot go out and get yourself at least something to fill that bottom end of your team. You know that injuries happen. Your D is full. You have Mark Friedman. You have Shane Gostisbehere. You have a lot of defensemen. You will be okay. Maybe you could add another one if you want. Probably not. Most likely what you're looking to add is a forward and probably a fourth line center. I think that's what the Flyers should go for. A third line center would be optimal. They can find a guy of Scott Lawton's talent, a guy who can play the middle and play the wing as well, so we can shift him around if we need to, but also can play a two-way game. We don't need him to score a lot of goals, but we do need him to compete. We need him to be able to drive the net, a lot like what Pitlick has brought, honestly. And Pitlick, Raffle, Lawton, that's the tier we're talking about here. I would say even Lawton is a little bit better if we can get to that point. I think Lawton has still a little bit more room to grow offensively, so if we can get a guy like that, that would be fantastic. But don't talk about trading your good players away. This is not a time for the Flyers to trade away roster players. It's a point to add. We're going to go in. We're going to go for the long haul. You need bodies. You need competent bodies. And you need bodies that will not get intimidated. Remember, come playoff time, Farabee, Myers, maybe even Sanheim, Friedman, maybe Hart. There are going to be young guys. Bunneman, NAK. They're going to be young guys who are not going to perform the exact same way. And that has to be expected. If they do, and I'm wrong, fantastic. But you should not be expected that a kid's going to come into the playoffs, at least from game 1 and game 2, and be used to that adjustment. The adjustment is insane. Even as a viewer, it is incredibly noticeable. Every moment is tense. The crowd is going off every 5 seconds, and every mistake turns into a goal, it seems. So the playoffs, a whole different story. So adding a key veteran person, if you have playoff experience, like my dream would be to add Joe Thornton. I'm not giving up a first-round pick to get him, and that's what it would cost. But, that would be awesome. Even a 40-year-old Joe Thornton, I don't care. Fourth line Joe Thornton would be amazing. Absolutely amazing, just like Spezza in Toronto. We could definitely use a guy like that right now. Even Pierre-Edouard Bellemare would be amazing right now as a fourth-line center. People made fun of him, but a guy who can play a competent two-way game like that, that's what we need come playoff time. And I think the Flyers are looking for it.